YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today I got my linebacker rankings for the NFL Draft going through top 10. And let me tell you, it's not the best class. Not the best class. I think teams would be better off kind of going for the upside guys that are, there's quite a few of them that are fairly new at the position, or it's going to be brand new to them, but they have athletic ability or the upside at the position. So it's actually an intriguing group, though, even though it isn't the best. We got position rankings on the channel, a playlist full of them. Please like, subscribe to notifications on me live during day one of the NFL Draft. Follow our Twitter. That is very important. Links pinned in the comments for anything you're looking for. Number one linebacker for me is Drew Sanders, who was an edge rusher for Alabama before transferring to Arkansas and playing off the ball, which last year he was pretty solid at for being fairly, being new to the position. Good size, 6'4", 235. The range is really what stands out the most. Really rangy when he's, attacking downhill, which he's not afraid to do. Some of the linebackers in this class a little hesitant to get downhill, fill gaps, make a big play in a tight area where it's going to be a collision. I don't see that being a problem for Sanders. The issue is sometimes he'll miss some of the tackles. He missed quite a few tackles this year, but even with the missed tackles, I like a lot of what he does. Some things that he has that other linebackers are missing, and it's, tough to coach it, being able to, being unafraid to get downhill and make a big time play, or being able to shed blocks. Some of these guys don't really shed blocks too well, or can't, or put themselves in position to get blocked. So don't see that from Sanders. Good thing. And there's a lot of upside. Obviously playing the position more. He went to Alabama for a reason, because he was talented. I heard Nick Saban say they were eventually going to move him off the ball, but he wanted to go play right away. It would have taken some time to change positions and start for Alabama. But he stays in the SEC in a pretty good program in Arkansas and plays pretty well. I like the pass rushing ability. He was originally an edge rusher, so you could see that. That's kind of going to be a common theme with these linebackers. Like, they're good at this because they played that position. In this case for Sanders is the edge position. So he can rush off the edge. He can blitz. He can play inside linebacker. He can play outside linebacker. I think a 3-4 team inside linebacker with a lot of blitzing. I think that's where he would fit best. I think he's the best in the class with taking on and shedding blocks. And again, he's very new to the position. He did have a ton of missed tackles, like ones that were like so close, like that would have been a great play. You were very close to bringing them down. He didn't bring them down. So hopefully that's something he can clean up, because you need to be able to tackle a little bit better to play the linebacker position. But even with the missed tackles, he does some things just better than the other linebackers. But if it wasn't for those missed tackles, he'd be a first-round pick, because there's so much else to his game, because he's had a bit more than the other guys that, I'd feel a little more comfortable in round 2. That's why I have him graded, because it is risky, because he's new to the position. He's got the missed tackles, but there is a lot of upside. Could be a boom or bust player here. Inconsistent with his reads. That's really not a big deal compared to the rest of the linebacker class. And just 1 year at the experience 1 year experience at the position. Number 2 is going to be Trenton Simpson, who is a freak athlete, absolute freak athlete, impressive in coverage, almost looks like a DB at times, and that's because he kind of was, which nobody's really talking about, probably because he's a linebacker now, and he was actually a top recruit linebacker coming out. And of course, when you're a big time defensive player, at least around then, you'd go to Clemson. That's definitely one of the places you go. But under Brent Venables, who was one of the best defensive coordinators in football, is now the head coach for Oklahoma, was last year. But he recruited him, and under him, he actually played. He played some linebacker. He even rushed off the edge, but he mainly played in the slot. He was almost a slot defensive back, which you don't really hear being talked about a lot. It took me going to the 2021 tape, because I watched 2022 first. I remember stuff from this year. I didn't remember anything from Trenton Simpson last year, so I went back and watched 2021. And I saw him in the slot so much, and I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, I know he has the athletic ability to play there, and I knew he was good in coverage, but it makes sense. He's actually a linebacker in high school, more of a slot guy that can move around leading up to this past year. A lot of his snaps were at linebacker this year, so it's good that he got the experience there. So I think he has upside with more reps there. Has that big play ability. You see him fly across the field using his athletic ability, making a big play. Making a big play in coverage, pass breakup. I think he can get his hands in the ball in the NFL a bit. Everyone's looking for these athletic pass, coverage linebackers, and here you go. You got one that was kind of made to play the position, but then got that experience in the slot. So you do love that. And versatile, too. I've seen him rush off the edge, which not going to be like Drew Sanders in that category. Drew Sanders is going to be better, but and rushing off the edge because he's an actual edge rusher. But you've seen him do a bit of everything. You can put him in a slot if you need to. So I see the upside there. But yeah, teams could go. There's going to be a lot of teams that probably won't be that interested just because they might view him as kind of a slot defender, and they may go, I'd just rather put a corner or safety there, an NFL defensive back there. And I don't really see him in a 3-4. Going to have to be 4-3, so there's teams that will pass. He hesitates at times where he's like, something he does with his feet, I noticed. Like he's sitting there kind of bouncing a little bit, like waiting. He's a little bit of hesitation. I think that kind of goes in where he's lacking instincts at the position, kind of, playing more at the position could help. But yeah, kind of reading plays, and that's probably why he kind of sits and bounces a little bit, like waiting to the last second to figuring out the play or where he should go. It's usually against a run because if his role is to be in coverage, he's pretty good at that. So I did notice a lot of that. And that's something I did not like, where I'll see it play after play where he's sitting there bouncing, like, where do I go? Where do I go? Where's the ball going? Because he's not really going to – he can fill gaps, but not going to do it a whole bunch. So the hesitation, like that part, I hated that part of his game. That there's parts that I see him like, okay, this is a first-round linebacker who's got so much upside, the freak athleticism, the coverage, like he's got to be linebacker 1, but I dislike that so much where, and he's a little slow to react. It kind of all goes into it, all that, where he's just sitting there bouncing and kind of waits for somebody to block him, and he waits too long to react to the play. Then by that time, somebody blocks him, and he can get off the block. I think mainly with his kind of his quickness and using his arms. But I did not like that part of his game. But there's so much to work with here. You hear the name Trenton Simpson, you think you didn't really realize it until you watch the tape. Like this is an upside guy. This is a guy that might be pretty raw right away, actually. So even though he was a top linebacker recruit, and he ended up being more of a slot guy than back to more linebacker this year. So it's an interesting prospect here. But I do like him in round 2. Dayon Henley's kind of like the round 2, round 3, middle to round 2, anywhere from there to early round 3, the Washington State linebacker. But yeah, another guy he's very impressive in coverage. And it's like the other guys. There's a reason for it because he played receiver and he played defensive back, safety, and then he switched to linebacker. So understanding the receiver position helps. I love that. I love playing both sides. Guys play both sides. But actually, I love it more when they go from playing. I like it either way. Receiver to defense or defense to receiver. You just learn both sides. It just helps you so much. Gives you that experience, that knowledge. So you can see why he's good in coverage. I think Trenton Simpson might be better. Yeah, he's better with like his athleticism, like straight speed, maybe leaping ability, and maybe attacking the ball. But Henley like flows like a defensive back, like the back pedal, the in and out of like opening up his hips, in and out of breaks, the footwork. It's just so smooth. It just looks like a defensive back, and saw that even getting deep downfield and making play on the ball. So that is really what stands out from Henley, and he's pretty solid stopping a run for a guy like that. Very solid athlete, high motor, fairly new to the position, so you think he would have upside. And I guess you almost can say it's kind of balanced. Got a little bit to his game there. But yeah, he is, again, still learning the position. And we're talking about him as an upside guy, but he's 23.5 right now. So that's not really old, but it's a little older than some of the other prospects. Trenton Simpson, one of the younger ones, he's 21. So that's you'd rather take him because, former 5-star guy, just absolute freak, a lot of upside. Henley's got some upside, but up there in age. Well, not up there, but a little older, obviously. Can struggle to shed blocks sometimes as well. And then sometimes like maybe too much of a high motor, kind of fly right by the ball carrier, kind of just, you got to calm down a little bit. So I do like Henley. I like the skills to his game there. Yeah, I was kind of like round 2 to 3, you could say here. It's going to be tough for teams that needing linebackers, because if you badly need a linebacker, need a guy that's a big-time player. I mean, is there really a big-time player in this draft? Not really, but a guy that's the biggest that you can find and it can help you right now, you pretty much have to spend a second-round pick on a linebacker. That's tough. For these teams that it's like, yeah, they kind of need a linebacker. It's not the end of the world if we wait a little bit or sign one later in free agency. Those teams need to wait. They need to wait, get one of the sleepers, in my opinion, unless you get good value. If you're getting Drew Sanders or Trenton Simpson like late too, I'm good. I'm good with taking Sanders early too. But I'm just saying, it's like really you feel better about the value in that range. This is where I start surprising people probably. Demarion Overshown, the Texas linebacker, is my number 4. You don't really see him ranked that high, I don't believe. But I was impressed with his 2022 tape. He's kind of a guy that's kind of all over the place. He's super rangy, kind of a freaky athlete as well. Pretty long as well, too. So that helps it always kind of goes into the range and using your athleticism in that. But, yeah, another guy, former safety, so it kind of shows that he's pretty good in coverage. But I like this year. I don't know if he really showed that much of the coverage skills this year. I already kind of knew he had it. But that's a big thing for me because he improved big time this year. In 2022, he looked like a legit linebacker this year, like in run fits, stopping the run, getting downhill, making the big hits, making the big plays. They used him off the edge sometimes. They blitz him quite a bit. He's pretty effective in that category. Definitely could attack downhill, kind of a violent guy at times. So he's just kind of, after this season, he showed that, yeah, linebacker's in his future. Like, this is for him. He can improve in it. Some of these other guys, it's like you got to see them in it a little bit more. Even some of the guys ahead of them. We're going to have to see them in it a little bit more. First, we know they have a tremendous upside. That's maybe why the guys are ahead of him. But, he already kind of showed that step, that improvement. So I love that. Kind of a flashy tape, too. So I like that about him. Average play strength, he's a little, the frame's a little thin, obviously, the body type. So that's probably why. Still kind of learning the position like some of these other guys. Definitely can improve the block shedding. Once somebody has him locked up, it's a little difficult for him to escape, I suppose, probably due to the thin frame a little bit. And it has had a couple injuries that have popped up in the past. But I was more impressed than I thought I was going to be. I did not expect him to have him top 5. I would have guessed going into the tape I'd probably have him around 6, but so I guess it's not too far off, but do have him in the top 5. And then number 5 is a little bit of a gamble for me, I guess. But Yasir Abdullah from Louisville. Why I say it's a little bit of a gamble? It's another guy. All these other guys we talked about, they switch positions. And they've either played the linebacker position for a year or maybe 2, and some snaps on top of that maybe before that. But Abdullah hasn't been an off-ball linebacker. He's got some snaps kind of in off-ball linebacker duties, been very limited. He was an edge rusher for Louisville. Based on multiple things. Based on his build, I don't think teams are going to want to play him off the edge. But based off his play style, even off the edge, and the limited snaps he's had, and in what an off-ball linebacker do, dropping in coverage, he looked pretty good. And the way he plays, just the feel, just kind of gives you off-ball linebacker vibes, like an outside linebacker in a 4-3. 4-3 outside linebacker. A guy that you want to blitz a bit from that spot as well. To me, it made some sense. So, round 3, round 4, it's a risky pick because those teams are. I'd bet that a team would switch his position. If he goes to a 3-4 team, they're not switching his position. He's playing off the edge. If he goes to a 3-4 defense, so that'll kind of get you the idea. When he gets drafted. If he gets drafted by a 3-4 team, he's going to stay off the edge. If he gets drafted by a 4-3 team, he's going to play off-ball linebacker. So I like him off-ball. He's a freak athlete, very fast, knows how to use his athleticism. He has the pass rushing skills because he played off the edge and he was good there. He would get after the quarterback. He just doesn't really have the size, the length, maybe to deal with the tackles in the NFL. I really don't feel he does, but he can blitz in a 4-3 as an outside linebacker. Great production. And I'm not just talking about sack number. I mean, you go across the board. Tackles for loss, sack numbers, forced fumbles, pass deflections, interceptions. He's got it. And maybe he doesn't have the collection of everything throughout his career, but he's done a bit of everything throughout his career. But this last year, he's got everything across the board. That's pretty impressive, especially when you're projecting this guy to be an off-ball, because he has some of the production that kind of carries over to covering if he's off the ball, or, forced fumbles. I mean, that's pretty big. It's big for rushing the passer as well. But, limited snaps in coverage. but a decent amount for an edge guy. More than some of those guys in the edge department. But when he was in coverage, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good at getting his head around, looking at the ball, playing pretty sticky in coverage, reading the quarterback in zone coverage. Like, he looked pretty good. It's very, very limited. So that's why it's a little risky for teams or for me to put him this high. But I feel like I identified in the limited snaps that he could be a solid off-ball linebacker. I was almost tempted to put him higher than this, put him at 4. It is very risky because there's a lot of unknown. But he is twitchy and he's very good at reacting. The speed of his reactions is pretty good. Was an edge rusher, so we talked about this. That's why it's a negative. He's going to have to change positions. If a 3-4 team takes him, they're not playing him off ball. We might as well move him over to the edge rankings. If a 4-3 takes him, they're not gonna play him at defensive end. They're just not gonna do it. Limited reps. Talked about that. Slightly undersized. The frame's all right. He's built. He's got some muscle on him. He's 6 feet tall. I mean, for a 6-foot guy, maybe a little bit more length than that. But everyone's getting lengthier and lengthier and more built. So maybe slightly undersized. And yeah, we kind of talked about it. He's a tweener guy. It's like there's a lot of guys that are tweeners, like guys that have played multiple positions. But the guys I'm actually put tweener, like label them tweener, like it's kind of like maybe there's a doubt on where you play them. Like I'm sitting here saying like I'm actually feel pretty good about him off ball, but you could go either way there. So interesting one. And then the next group of guys here, where again I'll probably have some surprises. Small school guy, not a big name here being talked about at all. Marte Mapu from Sacramento State. And another guy where he played a different position really, and you're kind of tweaking it. You're switching a little bit. He was listed, if you go look him up, he's listed as Sacramento State safety. But if you watch him, that's the tough part here because I don't have access to a lot of stuff. Wasn't able to watch much from the Sacramento State kid. But like what I saw. But yeah, so again, listed as safety by Sacramento State. But if you watch him, he was actually a slot guy first. He played in the slot. And then next, you play in the box like an outside linebacker role. I mean, he has some snaps lined up at actual safety, but it's mainly slot, like a big nickel type guy, a big slot guy that can play in the box. And he had the movement skills and the experience back there where he was pretty good in coverage, especially good enough for Sacramento State and the competition they play. But I thought, whenever he was needed to stop the run or whenever he needed to fly up, make a play, that's where he stood out. He's not afraid to attack downhill, be like a thumper type guy, lay a pretty good hit. He's not afraid to do that, and he can do that. So I love that. Versatile, we talked about playing the slot and playing off ball, and then the mixture of being able to stop the run and the pass is fantastic. But then you go to the Senior Bowl, which I actually went back and watched some practice tape clips, mainly just clips is what you can find from the Senior Bowl, and they had him live because we didn't really hear about his name that much during the Senior Bowl either. Because I don't watch every snap of practice while it's going on, but and they had them lining up because NFL teams, where they decide to line guys up, and other NFL teams are kind of talking to the guys there, telling them where to line them up. They line them up at linebacker and in drills, and he looked like a natural, looked like a guy that's played the position for a long time, and that's just based off practice. Did a little bit of damage in the game, I believe, but he looked really good in that practice playing linebacker. So I'm riding with it. I put him at number 6. I don't know if anybody else can rank him this high. So the couple of last guys we were talking about, I guess I'm going to be way higher on than everyone else, I think. So it just feels right. Feels legit. Most of the snaps came in the slot though, so maybe a little bit of it, you kind of changed the position, and then he did play weaker competition, which Sacramento State was good. They played some of the better teams in FCS. So it's not like the worst competition in the world. Jack Campbell I have at 7. I was surprised, and I wasn't thrilled with Jack Campbell's tape, and I tweeted it not that long ago either that I just don't know what there's a lot of people that I think most people have Jack Campbell linebacker 1, and I'm just not on board with that, based on what I'm watching. So I was a little surprised that other people have him linebacker 1 in what I watched, but he does have impressive size and, build, length. Was he 6'4", 6'5"? Just looking at him, he looks like the ideal linebacker, right? And maybe that's what people are kind of going off a little bit. And he is solid in zone coverage. Talk about it all the time here on the channel that Iowa's Iowa's a good zone coverage defense. They always have been and always will be, it kind of feels like. So, like NFL zone. So he's capable in that category too. That's great. But he is pretty slow to read and react. People talking about his instincts. I don't know. Reading the play, he's like a little slow to react. Mainly the reactions to react to it. In my opinion, I saw several snaps like that. And that kind of goes into the next part. Like he plays himself into blocks. I think because he's so slow to react, he's kind of moving and he's kind of just so focused on where the play's going to be. He kind of plays himself into blocks and right out of the play. I saw it. I mean, there were snaps where it was snap after snap, and I'm like, man. But when he reads it right, he makes a pretty good play. He'll get downhill and he'll get in the backfield, make a play. Again, he's pretty good in zone coverage. He's not the most athletic dude. You wish like the bursts was a little better. He tested very well at the combine. The 3-cone drill was actually extremely impressive, which is kind of an important one when it comes to defenders, I suppose. So I think if he ends up being better in this, I think he just found a way to improve in like his reading and reacting skills. That's where I was at. But I was not thrilled with the tape. I think people are maybe banking on somebody coach him up in the NFL because he already has the size, like the build and the experience in zone coverage, which is kind of NFL ready, I guess you could say. So I just had a tough time with his film. So I'm just very surprised the amount of people that have him at the top there. But overall, solid football player. I just feel more comfortable around 3 or 4 with him rather than where everyone's talking about 2. Nick Herbig, another one that's going to be changing positions. He's kind of in the conversation with Yasir Abdullah. I think most people will have Herbig ahead of Abdullah, probably because he was just overall maybe a more... Abdullah was so productive, though, but Herbig was maybe a bigger name, just a bigger player, but they're switching positions. I see the upside with Abdullah a little bit more when switching positions. But Herbig is a big-time playmaker, mainly with the sacks. You're making plays on the quarterback. Good production, good pass rusher. Again, 4-3 outside linebacker that wants to blitz that outside linebacker a bit. That's where he'll fit in. And somebody could use him off the edge because he was good there. But he is undersized. He's even undersized for the edge position, and the position change will be needed, so it's a little bit of a mystery there. Henry To'o from Alabama. He's instinctive. Like, there was a reason where he was the inside guy for Alabama, and he was a guy that called the defense. There's a reason for it. Drew Sanders ended up at Arkansas. So there has to be a reason for it there. He's got good play at Tennessee and at Alabama. He's got the experience. I think he's pretty good at reading plays. He feels like a smart linebacker, which is good, which is really good. He's pretty solid in coverage as well. He's lacking the play strength, though. Does he have, sometimes he'll slide right off the tackles, or he's not going to come up and make that big hit or anything. It kind of shows up, and then with the blockers too. Once those blockers got a hold of him, he's just really not getting off. So I saw a lot of that. So that was kind of my issue, just lacking that big playability. Like some of the other guys, I want to see those wild plays. Like, to be great, you want to have those plays there. But he's got experience at a high level, playing Tennessee and Alabama. Then Ivan Pace, which is an interesting one from Cincinnati because he was insanely productive. All-American for a reason. In the backfield, tackles for loss, sacks. The best thing about him, kind of being a disruptor, a physical disruptor, but he, multiple parts to that. He will do the dirty work. He will take out blockers. He will throw his body in there, take out blockers, disrupt the play, throw off the play, throw off the offense, help somebody else make the play. That is what actually stands out to me most about him. And then usually those guys don't have the production. He's got elite production on top of that. So that's just like, wow. That's wow. When I first started watching him and saw kind of the numbers too, I'm like, yeah, I might be higher on him, but I knew he was undersized. I was factoring that in. Like, he's definitely undersized, but yeah, you start to think about it a little bit more. Like, he's not a guy you want in coverage. You start to watch a little bit more. He's not a guy you really want in coverage, and he's just going to be super scheme specific. Like, to me, it's, I don't really, he could be a 4-3 inside linebacker, but it's more just based on how they run things and how 3-4 teams run things. He's most likely going to be a 3-4 inside linebacker that is severely undersized, but he needs specifically a 3-4 team that'll blitz him a lot, not really have him in coverage, maybe have him off the field then. Is it going to be obvious what's happening when he's on the field? So it's kind of, that's my issue with him. It kind of limits the teams. It limits the teams here. So how high could I possibly have him if it's only this amount of teams that are going to get him? Maybe he'll play for one of those teams if they view him as a fit, though. Because if he plays, he can be productive. But he is very, very undersized. Malcolm Rodriguez, that you remember, everyone knew he was a good player. Everyone knew he had good tape. But he had like the smallest arm length out of anybody that was even in the NFL. He was undersized, and that's why he dropped. But we knew he's a good player. Pace is smaller than he is when it comes to just like pretty much everything. So that, and he's more scheme specific, like needing of a scheme reliant, I guess, than Rodriguez too. So that's the tough part too. So where the hell is he gonna go? Definitely like the 3-4 teams that'll blitz the inside. Teams you think of like the Giants right away, like that. The Ravens, if they're maybe getting ready to replace Queen, and he can just, they're gonna, or maybe they're not, but they're gonna start Queen and put Pace in sometimes. Then they're pretty good with working with guys like this. The Titans are good at getting the most. I mean, they don't blitz as many times as the other teams, but they're good at kind of getting the most out of their inside linebackers, like in playing to their strengths. And then they kind of let their guys walk then once they hit the free agency because they feel like they can do the same thing with the next guy. And it seems like Luke Fickell, who's at Cincinnati, him and Vrabel have something going, or something. They know each other or something. So it's a possibility there as well. But yeah, kind of scheme reliance there. So some interesting prospects. Some other ones I do like some of the sleepers. That's why I'm like, if you plan on drafting a linebacker and you don't absolutely need one at the top, go get those big time players at the top. Go get your, because it's pretty deep when it comes to pass rushers. Where I think the receiver talent in the second round is pretty good. If you want to grab your running back around then, sure. If you're looking for a linebacker, there's some guys down here like that I have rated pretty high that you can get in round. I'm going to have them grade higher than that, but you probably can get him around 4 or 5. And there's guys not even listed, like a Jalen Graham from Purdue. I like his game. He's going to go late probably. I like him. I like Isaiah Moore. Like if you need just a pure inside linebacker to stop the run, I like Isaiah Moore a lot. That's why it's tough leaving those guys off, because I think Isaiah Moore, like he's an inside guy that's built and he can stop the run. There's not too many guys that are great at that in this draft. So he's going to be higher on some of those teams' board. It's just, I guess these guys have more to their game, maybe more upside. So that's why they're ranked a little higher. But I think somebody's going to get, as weak as the linebacker class is, I think somebody's going to get some big-time upside guys. So, once you start digging into it a little bit here, you see there's positives. Upside guys, some sleeper guys that we talked about. So there is some things to get excited about. But if you're a team that, again, missed out on some big time like day 2 players because you just absolutely need a linebacker, maybe at a too early spot, I kind of feel bad a little bit for those teams, depending on where, when, who, what team, those situations. So not the best group, but an intriguing group. So that's my linebacker rankings. I know probably some surprises. I feel like I have surprises with every position group this year. Usually I am a little different. What I do is just based off what I see, but it feels like a lot of it this year. But that'll do it. We got defensive backs left, a couple separate videos. We'll probably include the slot guys with the corners like we always do, but that will do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.